seismic activity because it creates an earthquake. Okay. Now, earthquakes are measured seismically, okay, using the Richter scale, but a 6.0 is many times greater than a 4, so the scale is logarithmic. It's not linear, which is a problem when you go to graph things. So what I did was I took all of the seismic activity from 1969 to I did it in 2022, I believe, but and I graphed all the seismic activity. I wasn't looking for what I found. What I found was that the underground nuclear detonation exactly matched the 2011 underwater nuclear detonation that created the tsunami that took out the power plants, that took out basically tremendous amounts of life across the Pacific. Now we're close to a polar shift, and that's actually a genesis time. And that whole that whole section of water is fertile ground for creating new life. So that basically took all that away. Okay, there's still been a lot of new life creations by the Earth, and the Earth is part of creation itself, recorded in those areas. Okay, and you see that a lot on TikTok and so forth. But it's a fraction of what it could have been. The bigger part of this is that these detonations are not only being fed through the black market by probably the least amount by North Korea, but more so by destabilized Ukraine, most likely, and definitely through Iran, because Iran has been given cloaking devices to put on their ships, and you don't need cloaking devices if you're just shipping oil. Okay, so this has red flags all over it. The event that I just described was also looked at by a college in Japan, and they found that when the event took place in 2011, that the energy struck the ionosphere and circled the planet the same way a nuclear detonation would be recorded, okay, in the ionosphere. This data was given to the government of Japan, and nothing was done with it, and the media didn't do anything with the information. So that tells me that the politicians in Japan are compromised because they're not looking out for their citizens, okay? And geoengineering is World War III. And let me tell you why. The reason, I mean, you probably already know why, but specifically, we're close to a polar shift. I already mentioned that. Well, when you polar shift, your magnetic fields, okay, have to basically, the core flops, okay? And the core is the driving force of those magnetic fields, okay? When it gets to its new location, there's a lot of atoms in the rocks and all these different places that are going to be out of alignment with the engine. And it takes time for that engine to get those things polarized in the right direction. And for that moment in time, we lose 90% of our oxygen, okay? So what is supposed to happen prior to that event is that the Earth is supposed to go through a massive warming event, which is what they're trying to prevent. And that warming event is supposed to thaw not the snow, but the glacier ice, because glacier ice is what's coming down Niagara Falls, because that was once an ancient polar lake, but our current southern polar lake is Vostok, and that's what feeds those big blue icebergs. Well, that blue ice does not thaw into water; it thaws into oxygen, and that creates basically Earth to be a giant oxygen-rich hyperbaric chamber. Think of it as a very thick blanket around Earth before polar shift, because you're going to lose 90% of that blanket at polar shift, and that still leaves you okay. Okay, it's not an extinction event. Right now, our atmospheric layer has been depleted over 30% since 1958, since the beginning of the nuclear age. So this has been actually going on since 1958, okay? So now, but presently it's really amped up, okay? And every storm, everything that they can mask one of these events within, they're doing it, okay? These events typically are square seismically, and that was originally being recorded and being reported by the media, and that has stopped, okay? But I know there's a lot of smart people out there that can get this information probably to a lot more people than I can. So, but I'm just trying to be a seed to get people pointed into the right direction, because this takes everybody out. There isn't anything more important than what I'm talking about right now, okay? Now, there's an election coming up. Donald Trump is for fracking. Now, he may not understand that fracking is a tremendously easy, a very easy way to mask a subterranean geonuclear detonation, because people say, well, it was a frack, and not realize that there was an event that took place that's going to basically prevent the energy to move in the proper way internally in that giant engine we just talked about, and therefore reduce the magnetic fields. The reason the moon is pulling away from Earth, even though it's been stable all these hundreds of thousands of billions of years, is because the magnetic field of Earth has become less because of what I am talking about, okay? So global warming, there is no threat. In fact, it's the opposite. If all that blue ice does not thaw and give us a thick blanket of atmosphere and protect us from extinction at polar shift, it instead, there's hydrogen. That's all. Actually, that blue ice is called oxygen clathrate, but there's hydrogen clathrate in that same location in Lake Vostok in Antarctica, okay? Now, what happens is when the barometer drops and you lose all this pressure, and the events are set up so that Earth thinks, well, we're having a cold polar shift, so it adjusts to create a bigger radiator, more water, if you will, to create more balance on Earth for the next polar shift. So it actually creates another ocean. In other words, the oxygen and the hydrogen clathrate instead marry to create another ocean. And since there's no atmosphere to protect that ocean from freezing, it freezes instantly, and that creates ice 7. Ice 7 is the expanding ice wedge that created every diamond that lines every shore, every continent, because that's what pushed the continents apart, okay? We don't want an ice 7 ocean creating event. We instead want an insulating blanket and people to be able to survive, okay? So this is for all the marbles, the entire Monopoly board, and the bad guys are playing to the end, and people need to know what the end game is, and that's what I'm trying to deliver to you right now. God bless. Okay, I just wanted to make this video to inform people